Okay, so we have the transmitter here, the Bosscam T351. Comes with a switch mode power supply unit. On the back here you can also see the dip switches for changing the channels. Let's see if we can focus at all on that. But basically they're all in the down position. I had a little trouble with this, the channel changing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a 200 milliwatt transmitter. Has 8 channels, 5.8 gigahertz, and it came with this wire harness here. So if you got video, audio, power out, ground, and I don't know what the green wire is for. So basically black is ground, red is voltage out, yellow is video, and white is your audio. So coming over here, I kind of hacked it to go into a GoPro wire harness. Talk about that in a second. So we've got a couple wiring harnesses that it came with. Came with this little pin connector here, and so that has your ground, voltage out, video, audio. Not sure what the green one is, but I don't use it anyway. So and then pretty much rigged my own wiring harness to go into the 10-pin mini USB. I'll talk about that later. And it also came with this power wire harness. So this is the power in to the transmitter, and this other wire harness that's power out to your camera. So it just came with 2 wires that were bare on this other end, and then it's got this 2-pin connector right here that goes into the transmitter. So on here what I did is I basically took servo lead, the 3-pin servo lead, and cut one side off, pulled out the signal wire, and was just left with basically the positive and ground wires. And then I soldered those together here, wrapped it up with some electrical tape, and got a power wiring harness out of it. So it works pretty good. And then on this one, this is a newer is the manufacturer, just like the 450 frame. This is the newer FPV GoPro Hero 3 adapter 10-pin USB, and it comes with power, with a power regulator on it. You got the JST connector, and so I basically just soldered the ground and video together on the wiring harness that came with the transmitter, and it worked. I tried to use just a regular 10-pin mini USB, but I guess it was wired different because I spent forever trying to get it to work, and it was no luck whatsoever. So I kind of hacked this wire up, and was trying with test leads, just different combinations of wires. It's a wonder I didn't burn up the transmitter or my GoPro or something, but I didn't, thankfully. And so you might be able to hack one of these and get it to work. I'm pretty sure you have to open this part up and get into there and actually get things into the right pins. And there's actually a how-to, DIY how-to that Dave from Flite Test put out. I'll have a link in the description below to that, so if you wanted to give that a shot, you could, but I just went ahead and bought this for like $6 on Amazon. There's also one that comes without power, and that's like $4 or $5. So basically that will just plug into your GoPro Hero 3 just like any other mini USB there. And you don't need to have power to it, but you have that option if you want to. I'm not really set up to where I could right now. I would have to have like a separate power supply for it on board, and I don't really want to do that right now. So, plus I don't really have that much flight time to where I run out of battery on the GoPro anyway. This is the Hobby King power distribution board for a quadcopter. You can see it comes with the XT60 connector, and then it has 3.5mm female bullet connectors for each one of the ESCs. It also comes with this nifty little 2-pin JST that you can power other things with, or you can also go to a voltage detector. So that's why I rigged this servo lead here, so I could power my transmitter from that JST. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the polarity though. You can see a little positive sign right next to that far left pin, so you want to make sure that of course that lines up correctly when you plug it in, just like that. And now I've got power to the transmitter. And with the transmitter, you don't really have to worry too much about the input voltage, other than being within the parameters, which is anywhere between 7 and 15 volts. But that's why you have this switch mode power supply unit, and it'll help regulate that voltage for you. So when I first started messing with the transmitter, these dip switches were all in the up position, and according to the manual, that's supposed to be channel 1 on the receiver, but for some reason I wasn't getting a picture, and I tried messing with other corresponding channels and it wasn't working. So I just finally flipped all the dip switches down, which it doesn't have an actual channel assignment in the manual for that, but it ended up being channel 8. According to the instructions, channel 8 would be that last dip switch right there, would be in the up position. So just be aware of that. Your instruction manual might not reflect the correct channel assignments, so you might have to kind of mess around and see what works for each channel. So I believe on this transmitter, the channels are in the E band, so that's 5,705 megahertz to 5,945 megahertz. So you have like 25 or 20 megahertz worth of a gap between channels with the 8 channels. So yeah, I don't know what the mix-up is between the receiver and the transmitter as far as channel assignment, but yeah, for some reason those dip switches don't really, according to the instructions, don't really reflect what they're supposed to. So you're gonna have to experiment, mix around, find out what configuration actually works. Threw a little bit of Velcro on the back right here, so it can mount to and have some sort of vibration dampening to the frame. So, and looking at this right here, this is the top frame the inside bottom. So top of the frame right here, but we're on the inside of it. We've got the bottom piece right here, and it sets down on it just like that. So when I was testing out the transmitter, what came in really handy before I ended up soldering everything together were test leads. You have these little alligator test leads. You just clip on to each side, you know, one wire and then the next wire. So before you solder things together, you could test out the connections, make sure they work, make sure that you have the polarity correct for the power and so on. And that way you don't burn anything up, and you ensure that you don't have to unsolder and then resolder something because you got the connection wrong. So just a little bit of advice there. So just going to run through the wiring real quick, how I ran the wires through the frame. For the transmitter is going to go on the top of the frame. We're looking at the inside of the bottom of the frame. Well, this is the top deck bottom. So we're going to run the wire harness to the transmitter through here, and then it's just going to run through the rest of the frame. Gonna tidy it up, maybe fold it up and tape it to, or zip tie it to another set of wires, and then the power cable to the GoPro. I'm not going to use it, so I'm just gonna kind of tuck it away. So just going to use some electrical tape and some zip ties. Got a zip tie here. Just going to use that to connect it under the frame. Going to go ahead and connect it to the ESC power cables right here. And then we got enough length to plug into the GoPro here, and then the rest of this I'm just going to tuck away with some electrical tape. So now we're just going to look at the power cable. So we've got to the transmitter right here, that connector. Just going to run it through, set it right in here, and then going to make sure that our positive matches, or our polarity matches what's shown on the power distribution board for those GST connectors. And then I do the same thing here, some electrical tape. So we're all wired up. You know, we've got it tucked away here. We've got the power portion of the USB connector tucked away there. We've got our power cable connected to the power distribution board for the transmitter, and that's wired back in there. So we're going to go ahead and put the bottom back on, and we're just going to pretend we did that real quick. Turn the frame over. And then you can see I put a little pad of Velcro on the top part of the frame here, so it matches up with the Velcro on the bottom of the transmitter. Just going to set that on that pad. Gonna hook up our connections here. Hook up our power. And no, I don't have a circular polarized antenna yet, but I will eventually. Anyways, I've just got the stock antenna that it comes with. And the connector here for the antenna is a SMA connector, in case you're wondering. So for some of like the circular polarized antennas, you might need to get an adapter there. So that's hooked up, and then just to secure it, take a couple zip ties. There we go. So it's ready to go there. Just gonna put on that bottom deck and throw on the GoPro. Here's our target. We've got the Bosscam instruction manual for the transmitter and receiver. Just gonna make sure that the GoPro Hero 3 power is on. Power's on, we're good. Got the 10-pin mini USB that's connected. That wiring harness goes through here, pops up at the transmitter here. Alright, once we're all set up and before we go live, we're just gonna test the voltage real quick on this power supply for the receiver. It's a 1000 milliamp hour 2-cell battery. So it says 7.5 volts, 7.4 volts. Probably shouldn't go below 7 volts, 3.5 volts per cell. But we're going to test it just to make sure we're within the parameters of the receiver. So I'm going to touch these contacts on the JST connector real quick. See if we can't get a good voltage measurement. About 7.9 volts, almost 8 volts. So we're within the parameters, and we'll go ahead and hook it all up. Going up to the receiver. Receiver's all hooked up and ready to go. So we've got audio video going out, video, audio, power. Power is hooked up to these JST connectors, and our power supply, 1000 milliamp hour, 7.4 volt 2-cell battery, well within the power in parameters. So we're gonna turn this on and see if we get video. So just make sure we're on channel 8, and we're good.